Anna stood shivering at the train station clutching her last $10 bill when a desperate stranger approached her begging for help. And in that single moment of kindness, she had no idea she was about to change her entire life forever. Because the man she helped was not who he seemed, and what happened next would lead her from the edge of poverty to an opportunity she never dreamed possible, but only after she discovered the true meaning of giving when you have nothing left to give, and met a woman named Carol, who would see something in her that she couldn't see in herself. Anna pulled her thin jacket tighter against the biting wind as rain hammered down on the train station platform, creating rivers of water that rushed past her. Worn-out shoes and soaked through to her socks, making her toes numb with cold. But the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the anxiety gnawing at her stomach because in exactly 2 hours, she had the most important job interview of her life. And she looked like she had just crawled out of a storm drain, which technically she kind of had since her apartment building's roof had been leaking for weeks and her landlord refused to fix it. So she woke up that morning to find her only professional outfit drenched in dirty water, which meant she had to wear her backup clothes, which were really just her regular clothes that had seen better days about 5 years ago. And now here she was waiting for a train that was already 20 minutes late, wondering if the universe was actively conspiring against her. She reached into her pocket and felt the familiar crinkle of her last $10 bill, which was supposed to buy her lunch for the next 3 days, until her unemployment check finally came through, but she had learned to make a single pack of instant noodles stretch pretty far when she had to. And besides, if she got this job today, then money wouldn't be such a constant crushing weight on her chest anymore, though. That was a big if, considering she was competing against dozens of other candidates who probably owned umbrellas and had working showers and didn't smell like mildew and desperation. The train station was mostly empty, except for a few other miserable souls huddled under the inadequate shelter trying to escape the relentless downpour. And Anna found herself staring at the arrival board, willing the numbers to change and announce her train. But instead she noticed a man approaching from the corner of her eye, and her first instinct was to look away, because she had learned that making eye contact in public spaces often led to uncomfortable conversations or requests for money that she didn't have. But something about his demeanor made her pause, because he wasn't walking with the aggressive confidence of someone looking for a handout. He was stumbling, actually, and his face was pale and drawn with obvious pain. "Excuse me," the man said. His voice rough and strained, and Anna could see, now that he was older than she first thought, maybe in his 60s, with silver hair plastered to his forehead, and an expensive-looking coat that was completely soaked through, which seemed odd, because expensive coats were usually waterproof, weren't they? But then she noticed the way he was holding his side and the slight grimace that crossed his features every time he took a breath, and suddenly her own problems seemed less important. "Are you okay?" Anna asked, taking a small step toward him, even though every survival instinct she had developed over the past year of barely scraping by told her to keep her distance, because people with problems became your problems if you let them, and she had enough of her own thank you very much. But she couldn't just ignore someone who was clearly in distress, even if she was already late and stressed and completely unprepared for what was supposed to be her big break. "I need help," the man said, and his hand trembled as he gestured vaguely toward the station exit. "My wallet was stolen, and I need to get to the hospital, but I don't have any cash for a taxi and my phone died, and I just need maybe $10 to get across town. And I know this sounds like a scam, but I promise I'm not trying to trick you. I just really need help right now, and you're the first person who has even looked at me like I'm a human being." Anna felt her heart sink, because of course this was happening right now when she literally could not afford to help anyone, not even herself. But she looked at this man who was clearly in pain and possibly in danger, and she thought about all the times over the past year when she had needed help, and no one had stopped and no one had cared, and she had learned what it felt like to be invisible, to be someone that people looked through rather than at. And she had promised herself that if she ever got back on her feet, she would never make another person feel that way. The problem was she wasn't back on her feet. She was barely hanging on by her fingernails, and that $10 in her pocket was the difference between eating and not eating for the next 72 hours. But then again, this man might be having a heart attack or internal bleeding or something. Equally serious. And what was 3 days of hunger compared to someone's life? Even if there was a chance he was lying, even if this was some elaborate con, even if she was being the world's biggest fool, she couldn't live with herself if she walked away. She pulled the crumpled bill from her pocket and pressed it into his trembling hand before she could change her mind, and the look of shock and relief on his face was so genuine that she knew immediately she had made the right choice, even if it was also possibly the stupidest choice, but that was kind of her specialty lately, making choices that were both right and stupid in equal measure. "Thank you," the man said, and his eyes were actually watering, which made Anna deeply uncomfortable, because she didn't do well with emotional displays, especially from strangers, but she nodded and told him to take care of himself. And then she turned away because her train was finally pulling into the station, and she needed to focus on getting to this interview and somehow convincing a potential employer that she was a competent professional adult, despite all evidence to the contrary. The train ride into the city gave Anna too much time to think about what she had just done and to calculate exactly how long she could survive on the jar of peanut butter and half loaf of bread she had left in her apartment. Which wasn't long, but maybe she could stretch it, and maybe she could ask her neighbor if she could borrow a cup of rice or something. Though she hated asking for help, almost as much as she hated needing it in the first place. But these were the kinds of calculations that filled her days now, the constant mental math of survival that left no room for anything else. The interview went about as badly as she expected, which is to say, not terrible, but not great either, because she couldn't stop thinking about that $10 and whether the man had actually made it to the hospital, or if he was a very good actor who was probably buying drugs with her money right now, which made her feel both guilty for thinking it and stupid for not thinking it earlier. But the interviewer seemed nice enough and said they would be in touch, which Anna knew from experience meant thanks. But, "No thanks, we found someone who doesn't look like they got dressed in a dumpster." She trudged back to the train station in the rain, which had finally stopped, but left everything dripping and gray and miserable, and she was so focused on figuring out how to make peanut butter sandwiches last for 3 days that she almost walked right past the community center on 5th Street, where a small sign in the window advertised free meals and volunteer opportunities at the local soup kitchen, and normally Anna would have kept walking because she had her pride, and she wasn't quite desperate enough to accept charity. But today that word volunteer caught her attention, because she suddenly had a lot of free time and no money, and maybe helping other people would make her feel less pathetic about her own situation. She found herself pushing through the doors before she could talk herself out of it, and suddenly she was standing in a warm, bright lobby that smelled like coffee and cleaning supplies, talking to a cheerful woman named Patricia, who seemed delighted that someone wanted to volunteer, and didn't ask any awkward questions about why Anna looked like a drowned rat, or why she was available to start immediately like today, right? Now, this very minute, if that was okay. Patricia led her down a hallway covered in children's artwork and inspirational posters about community and compassion, which Anna normally found annoying, but today felt almost comforting, like maybe the world wasn't completely terrible, even if it often felt that way. And then they were in a large kitchen where several people were chopping vegetables and stirring enormous pots of soup, and the smell of cooking food made Anna's stomach growl so loudly that she was certain everyone heard it. But if they did, they were polite enough not to mention it. "This is Emily," Patricia said, gesturing to Anna, and Anna didn't bother to correct her. Because what did it matter really if these people called her Emily, or Anna, or anything else? She was just here to help and to distract herself from her own problems for a few hours, and maybe to be around the smell of food, even if she couldn't eat any of it yet, because that would be crossing a line somehow, though. She wasn't sure what line exactly or why it mattered, but it did. The other volunteers welcomed her warmly and put her to work washing dishes, which was mindless enough that her thoughts could wander, but busy enough that she didn't spiral into complete despair, and she found herself falling into a rhythm, scrubbing and rinsing and stacking while listening to the gentle chatter of the people around her, talking about their days and their families and upcoming holidays like they were normal people living normal lives, which she supposed they were, even though they chose to spend their afternoons helping feed strangers instead of doing literally anything else. She had been working for maybe an hour when a woman approached the sink carrying a stack of serving trays, and Anna looked up to find herself face to face with someone who radiated such calm authority that she immediately stood up straighter and stopped slouching like she usually did when she was trying to make herself invisible. "You must be the new volunteer," the woman said with a warm smile that reached her eyes and made Anna feel like maybe she wasn't completely invisible. "After all, I'm Carol and I coordinate the meal programs here, and I just wanted to say thank you for helping out today. We always need extra hands, and you've been working so hard." Anna mumbled something about it being no problem and being happy to help, which was only partially true because mostly she was there because she had nowhere else to be and nothing else to do. But Carol didn't need to know that, and besides, there was something about this woman that made Anna want to impress her, or at least not disappoint her, which was a strange feeling considering they had just met. Carol didn't leave, though. She just stood there looking at Anna with this thoughtful expression like she was trying to figure something out, and Anna started to feel self-conscious about her wet clothes and unwashed hair and general appearance of someone who was barely holding their life together, because that was exactly what she was, and she had never been good at hiding it. "How long have you been in the city?" Carol asked conversationally as she started drying some of the dishes Anna had washed, and Anna appreciated that she was helping instead of just supervising because it made the conversation feel less like an interrogation and more like two people working together. "About a year," Anna said, which was true, even if that year felt like a decade, considering everything that had happened: the lost job, the ended relationship, the slow slide from comfortable middle-class existence to whatever this was where she was washing dishes in a soup kitchen and giving away her last $10 to strangers. Carol nodded like she understood something Anna hadn't said, and maybe she did because she had probably seen hundreds of people come through these doors, all of them, with their own stories of how they ended up here. And Anna was just another struggling person in a city full of them. Nothing special, nothing unique, just another casualty of bad luck and worse timing. "You know," Carol said carefully, "we're always looking for people who might want to take on more responsibility here. People who are reliable and hardworking, and who understand what it's like to need help, because they're the best at giving it. And I've been watching you work today, and I think you might be one of those people." Anna wasn't sure what to say to that because she didn't feel like any of those things. She felt like a mess who couldn't keep her life together, and who had just bombed a job interview, and who was going to spend the next 3 days eating peanut butter straight from the jar, with her fingers because she was too broke to buy bread. But Carol was looking at her with such genuine interest and encouragement that Anna found herself wanting to believe it, wanting to believe that maybe she was more than just her current circumstances. "We have a position opening up next month," Carol continued. "Assistant coordinator for the meal programs. It's part-time to start, but it comes with a small salary and meal benefits, and the possibility of full-time work if things go well. And I know we just met, but I think you should apply for it. I think you'd be really good at it." Anna felt something dangerous flutter in her chest, something that felt suspiciously like hope, which she had learned to be very careful about, because hope was what hurt the most when things inevitably fell apart. But Carol was still looking at her with that warm, encouraging expression, and Anna realized that this woman was offering her a second chance, a real one, not just empty words or vague promises, but an actual opportunity to start over. "I don't have much experience with this kind of work," Anna admitted because she felt like she should be honest, even if it cost her this opportunity, because she was tired of pretending to be more capable than she was, tired of trying to sell herself as someone she wasn't. "That's okay," Carol said with a smile. "Everyone has to start somewhere, and sometimes the best qualification is just caring enough to show up and do the work. And you showed up today, even though I'm guessing you had other things going on, and you've been working hard without being asked. And that tells me more than any resume could." They talked for a few more minutes about the position and what it would entail, and Carol gave Anna some information to take home and think about. But Anna already knew she was going to apply because What other choice did she have? And besides, there was something about Carol's faith in her that made her want to try to become the person Carol seemed to think she already was. She worked for another few hours, helping serve the evening meal to a steady stream of people who came through the doors, all of them grateful for the hot food and warm space. And Anna realized that just yesterday she might have been one of them, if she hadn't been so stubborn about accepting help. And maybe that was why Carol saw something in her, because she understood both sides of this equation, the helping and the needing help, and how sometimes they were the same thing. When she finally left that evening, Patricia pressed a takeout container of leftover soup into her hands along with some bread and fruit and told her it would just go to waste otherwise, which Anna knew was probably a lie, but she accepted it anyway because she was too hungry and tired to refuse, and because maybe accepting help was also a form of strength, not just weakness like she had always thought. She ate the soup sitting on her apartment floor because her table was still covered in wet clothes from the leak, and it was the best thing she had tasted in weeks, even though it was just simple vegetable soup with nothing fancy about it. But it was warm and filling, and someone had made it with care, and that seemed to matter more than she had realized. The next few days were hard because peanut butter for breakfast and lunch got old fast, and she was still waiting to hear back from the job interview, which she was pretty sure was going to be a rejection. But she went back to the soup kitchen every day and kept working and kept talking to Carol, who seemed genuinely interested in her life and her thoughts and her dreams, which she barely remembered having anymore, because surviving didn't leave much room for dreaming. Carol told her stories about her own life, about being a single mother who had struggled to make ends meet, and about finding purpose in helping others, and about how sometimes the worst moments in our lives prepare us for the best ones, even if we can't see it at the time. And Anna wanted to believe her, even if her natural cynicism made it hard. Then one afternoon, about 2 weeks after that rainy day at the train station, Anna was chopping onions in the kitchen when Patricia came rushing in with her phone held out and a huge grin on her face, saying, "Emily, you need to see this. Someone is looking for you." Anna wiped her hands and took the phone, confused because who would be looking for her here? She had barely told anyone she was volunteering, and she didn't have any friends or family in the city who might track her down. But then she saw the news article on the screen with a headline that made her heart stop. "Local woman sought by millionaire philanthropist after random act of kindness." The article was about a man named Robert Chen, who was a wealthy businessman and philanthropist, who had suffered a medical emergency at a train station 2 weeks ago, and had been helped by a young woman who gave him her last $10 for a taxi to the hospital, and he had been trying to find her ever since to thank her properly and to offer her a reward. But all he knew was that she had been at the downtown train station on that rainy Tuesday morning, and he was hoping someone might recognize her from his description. Anna stared at the article with her mouth open, because this couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake or joke or hallucination brought on by too much peanut butter and not enough sleep. But Patricia and Carol were both looking at her with excitement and pride, and Carol was saying, "I knew there was something special about you. I knew it from the moment I met you." They called the number in the article, and Anna found herself stammering through an explanation of what had happened that day to a very professional-sounding assistant who asked her a bunch of questions to verify her identity, and then said Mr. Chen would very much like to meet with her if she was available, and could she come to his office tomorrow morning. Anna said yes, because what else was she going to say? And then she spent the rest of the day in a daze, wondering if this was really happening, or if she was going to wake up tomorrow and find out it had all been a dream brought on by expired soup or something. But the next morning she put on her best outfit, which still wasn't very good, but it was clean and dry, and she took the train to a gleaming office building downtown where she was ushered into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture. And then Robert Chen walked in looking much healthier than the last time she had seen him, and he smiled at her like she had done something extraordinary instead of just basic human decency. Anna felt overwhelmed by the gratitude he expressed and by his insistence that she had saved his life because he had been having a heart attack, and if he hadn't gotten to the hospital when he did, things could have ended very differently, and he wanted to give her a reward, a substantial one that would change her life, and Anna tried to refuse because she hadn't done it for money. She had done it because it was the right thing to do, but he was insistent. They talked for over an hour about her life and her struggles and her dreams, and Robert listened with genuine interest and asked thoughtful questions. And somewhere in that conversation, Anna realized that this wasn't just about a reward. This was about connection and understanding and seeing someone as a whole person, not just their circumstances in the end. Robert offered her more than just money. Though there was money, a generous amount that would solve her immediate problems and give her breathing room to figure out her next steps, but he also offered her something more valuable. He offered her a job at his foundation working on programs that helped people in crisis, and he said he wanted someone who understood what it was like to struggle and to need help, because those were the people who could make the biggest difference. Anna left that meeting feeling like she was floating because in the span of 2 weeks, she had gone from giving away her last $10 in the rain to having 2 job offers and a savings account that wasn't empty, and it was too much to process all at once. So she went straight to the soup kitchen to tell Carol what had happened. Carol hugged her tightly and said she was proud of her, but not surprised, because sometimes when you give without expecting anything in return, the universe has a way of giving back, and Anna had never believed in that kind of cosmic justice before, but maybe she was starting to now. She took the job at Robert's foundation because it felt right, and because it would allow her to help people on a larger scale. But she also kept volunteering at the soup kitchen because that was where it all started, and because Carol had become someone important to her, someone who believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. Months passed, and Anna's life transformed in ways she never could have imagined. She had a steady income and a nice apartment, and she was doing work that mattered, helping create programs that gave people second chances, just like she had been given. And every time she felt overwhelmed or scared that it might all disappear, Carol reminded her that she had earned this, that her kindness and hard work and willingness to help others, even when she had nothing, was what made all of this possible. Anna sometimes thought about that rainy morning at the train station, and how close she had come to walking past Robert without stopping. How easy it would have been to keep that $10 and ignore his request for help. And she realized that the smallest choices could lead to the biggest changes, and that giving when you had nothing left to give wasn't foolish, it was brave. She never forgot what it felt like to struggle to count pennies and skip meals and wonder if things would ever get better, because those experiences shaped who she became and made her better at her job, helping others who were going through their own difficulties. And she carried Carol's words with her always about how the worst moments prepare us for the best ones, and how sometimes being broken open is what lets the light in. Years later, when people asked Anna about how she got her start working in philanthropy and community development, she always told them about the $10 and the train station and the soup kitchen, and Carol, who saw potential in her when she couldn't see it in herself. And she told them that sometimes the best investment you can make is in another person's humanity, even if you can't afford it, especially if you can't afford it, because that's when it matters most. And whenever she faced a difficult decision about whether to help someone, or how to allocate resources or which programs to fund, she thought about standing in the rain with her last $10 and making the choice to give it away. And she knew that you could never go wrong, choosing kindness even when it was hard, especially when it was hard, because that's what separated just existing from actually living. The story of Anna and that rainy day became something of a legend in the community, a reminder that you never know whose life you might change with a simple act of compassion, and that the people we help and the people who help us are often not who we expect them to be, and that second chances don't just happen. They're created by people who care enough to offer them. Anna kept in touch with Robert, who became not just her employer, but her mentor and friend, and she worked closely with Carol to expand the soup kitchen's programs and create new opportunities for people who needed them. And together they built something meaningful, something that helped hundreds and then thousands of people find their way back from the edge, just like Anna had done. and on rainy days when Anna walked past train stations, she sometimes stopped to talk to the people waiting there, the ones who looked lost or scared or at the end of their rope. And she always carried some cash in her pocket just in case, because she remembered what it felt like to be desperate. And she remembered the $10 and how giving it away had somehow given her everything back 100-fold in ways she never could have predicted. She learned that life wasn't about holding on to what little you had. It was about trusting that there would be more, and that the act of giving, especially when it cost you something, was what made you rich in all the ways that actually mattered, and that the connection between people, the web of kindness and compassion and mutual support, was what held the world together even when everything else seemed to be falling apart. And so Anna lived her life guided by that principle of giving what you could, when you could, to whoever needed it. And she built a career and a community around that idea. And she never regretted that rainy morning or that $10 bill, because it had taught her the most important lesson of all, that we are not defined by what we have, but by what we're willing to give away.